In 1946, in a small town in the United States, a boy was born. His real name was not Ted Bundy. For many years, he did not know who his real father was. The woman he called Mom was not his mother. She was his grandmother, and his real mother lived in the same house with him. Everyone told him she was his sister. So the boy grew up inside a lie. A long lie. A lie that began with his name and ended with his family. He did not understand why the house felt heavy, why voices were always sharp, why fear lived in the walls. The man who raised him, his grandfather, was violent and unpredictable. He shouted, he cursed, he hit his wife, he hated children, and the boy watched. He watched anger. He watched humiliation. He watched power being used as pain. No one explained anything to him. No one told him the truth. No one protected him from what he saw. One night, when he was only 3 years old, his aunt woke up suddenly. She felt something strange in the room. When she opened her eyes, she saw him standing beside her bed. He was holding a knife. He said nothing. He only smiled. A small smile. A child's smile. But empty. She screamed. The knife fell. The boy was taken away, and the house pretended nothing had happened. Years passed. The boy learned how to behave, how to speak politely, how to sit still, how to look normal. At school, he was quiet but intelligent, shy but charming. Teachers liked him, students trusted him, but inside him there was a constant feeling. Shame. Shame that he did not understand. Shame that he could not name. Shame that followed him like a shadow. He did not know why he felt different. He did not know why he felt broken. He only knew that something was wrong. When he reached his teenage years, the truth finally appeared. Not gently, not kindly. He discovered that the woman he called sister was actually his mother, and the woman he called mother was actually his grandmother. His entire life had been built on a lie. His name, his story, his identity, all false. Something inside him cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. He began to see women differently, not as comfort, not as safety, but as betrayal, as the source of his confusion, as the beginning of his pain. He became obsessed with being normal, with being admired, with being powerful. He wanted to erase the boy he was and become someone new. At university, he tried to build a new image. He dressed well. He spoke carefully. He smiled often. People saw him as polite, smart, ambitious. But inside him, dark thoughts were growing. Thoughts he never shared. Thoughts that frightened him and excited him at the same time. He wanted control. He wanted dominance. He wanted to feel above others. Then came the moment that pushed him further into darkness. He fell in love with a woman, or at least what he thought was love. She was confident, independent, strong, and she rejected him. She said he was socially awkward, not good enough, not what she wanted. To her, it was just a breakup, but to him, it was a wound, a deep one. From that moment, love changed meaning. Women were no longer people to him. They became symbols, symbols of rejection, of humiliation, of power taken away. And something inside him decided he would never be weak again. From that point forward, his thoughts were no longer about fitting in. They were about taking control, about making others feel what he felt. And slowly, quietly, he began to plan. He did not become a monster in one night. It happened slowly, thought by thought, desire by desire. At first, he only watched. He walked near campuses, near libraries, near dormitories. He observed how people moved, how they trusted, how they helped. He noticed something important. Young women were kind, they were careful, but not enough. They believed in appearances, and he learned how to shape his. He bought neat clothes, pressed shirts, clean shoes. He practiced his voice in the mirror, soft, calm, almost shy. He practiced looking harmless. Sometimes he wrapped his arm in a fake cast. Sometimes he pretended to limp. Sometimes he carried heavy books. He made himself look weak. And when he spoke, he never rushed. "Could you help me?" Just for a moment.
Most people would say yes, because helping felt good, and the first time a woman walked with him to his car, he felt something he had never felt before. Power. Not loud power, not violent power, quiet power, the power of being trusted, the power of leading someone without force. That feeling became addictive. He learned where to park, which places were quiet, which times were best. He learned how to talk until fear disappeared from their faces, and once fear was gone, he changed. His voice became cold, his body became fast, his hands became weapons. But to the outside world, nothing seemed wrong. He studied law. He volunteered in political campaigns. He spoke about justice. He looked like a man with a future. While behind that future, there were empty spaces, spaces where people should have been. Disappearances began. A girl did not return from class. Another never arrived home. Another was seen last with a polite young man. Rumors spread, but rumors need proof. And he was careful. He did not kill in the same place. He did not stay in the same city. He did not repeat mistakes quickly. He moved from campus to campus, from state to state. He changed names, changed habits, changed stories, but inside him, nothing changed. The same hunger, the same need, control, power, silence. But, sometimes even the most carefully constructed mask can slip. A small mistake, a moment of weakness, and suddenly, the cracks begin to show. For years, he had hidden in plain sight, blending in, always one step ahead. Yet, beneath that calm exterior, the truth was starting to seep through. People began to notice things that didn't add up. Whispers grew louder, doubt crept in, and with each passing day, it became just a little bit harder for him to keep pretending. Until one day, something went wrong. A woman fought back. She screamed. She ran. She survived. She went to the police with shaking hands, and she said, "His name is Ted. He drives a white Volkswagen. He pretends to be injured." For the first time, his mask cracked. Police began to watch, to follow, to connect faces with reports, and soon, his name stopped being normal. It became suspicious. He was arrested. In court, he smiled. He spoke politely. He looked like a student who made a mistake, and some people believed him. But evidence grew. Witnesses appeared. Stories matched. Places aligned. He was sentenced, locked behind walls. For the first time in years, he was not free. But his mind was still working, and while guards watched him as a prisoner, he watched the doors, he counted steps, he measured windows, he studied routines. Freedom became a puzzle, and he was good at puzzles. One day he jumped from a courthouse window, he ran, disappeared. For weeks, his name filled the news. A killer on the loose. He hid, he starved, he stole, until he was caught again. And this time, they were sure, he would never escape. But they were wrong. He escaped again, and this escape was darker, because now, he was desperate, hungry, angry, uncontrolled. He went south, changed his name, found a place where no one knew him, and there, his violence exploded. So, here we are, at the final act. Everything we've seen so far has led up to this moment, and well, it's kind of amazing to think about how far things have come. As we reach the conclusion, let's take a deep breath and appreciate the journey. Thanks for sticking with it. Let's see how it all comes together. One night, he entered a house full of sleeping students. In just a few hours, he left behind a nightmare. This time, there was no hiding. His face was known, his name was everywhere, he was hunted, and soon, he was caught. Again. But now there was no smile, only cameras, only courtrooms, only stories of what he had done, and for the first time the world began to see what was behind the polite face. The trials were long. Day after day, witnesses entered the courtroom. They spoke about nights that never ended, about friends who vanished, about fear that stayed in their bones. He sat there wearing a clean shirt, hair neatly combed, looking like a man who belonged in an office, not in chains. Sometimes he took notes, sometimes he smiled, sometimes he stared at the ceiling as if he was bored. He chose to defend himself, not because he trusted himself as a lawyer, but because he trusted himself as a performer. He loved the attention. He asked questions slowly, he spoke with confidence, he made jokes, and for a moment, he made the courtroom forget what he was. But evidence does not forget. Photographs, teeth marks, objects taken from victims, each piece pulled the mask lower. He tried to explain, he tried to confuse, he tried to blame, movies, society, loneliness, anything but himself. Inside his mind, he still believed he was smarter than everyone. That he could talk his way out, that words could erase blood, but the walls were closing in, the stories became too many. The faces became too real, and slowly, the man who once walked freely became trapped inside his own history. In prison, time did not heal him, it sharpened him. He read law books, he read psychology, he read about himself, he learned how people saw him, a monster, a warning, a nightmare, and he hated that image, not because it was wrong, but because it was out of his control. He wanted to be seen as intelligent, as misunderstood, as complex, not as simple evil. So he talked, to reporters, to psychologists, to anyone who listened. He described his crimes as if they belonged to someone else. He said, he did this. He felt that, as if the killer was not him, as if distance could change truth. And some people listened, not because they believed him, but because they wanted to understand how someone like him could exist, and that question hung in the air. Was he born broken, or built that way? His childhood was examined, his family history, his relationships, every lie he lived with, every slap he saw, every rejection he felt, but no answer was complete, because pain does not always create violence, and violence is always a choice. Years passed behind bars, his hair changed, his face aged, but his eyes stayed the same, cold, alert, waiting for something he could still control. The final days approached, and only then did he begin to speak differently. Not louder, not softer, more carefully. He said he wanted to help, that he wanted to warn others, that he wanted to explain. He described his urges as a fire inside his head, a voice that never slept, a hunger that never left. He said it grew when he felt weak, when he felt small, when he felt rejected, and killing was how he felt tall, not in height, in power, but even in those words, there was no apology that reached the dead, no sentence that could return time. Outside the prison walls, families waited, not for revenge, but for quiet, for an end to a name that never left the news, for the chance to breathe without fear. Inside, he waited too, not for forgiveness, not for peace, for the last moment where all eyes would be on him. And when that moment came, he tried one last time to shape the story, to make himself sound human, to make himself sound made, not chosen. But history does not listen to excuses. It listens to actions, and his actions were already written in too many lives. The final morning arrived quietly. No dramatic sky, no thunder, no signs from the world outside, just a man sitting alone with the weight of everything he had done.
He was older now, thinner. His face no longer carried the confidence that once fooled so many. When they asked him if he had last words, he tried to speak like someone who understood regret. He said he was not born evil. He said he was shaped by lies, by fear, by rejection. He said he was made. But honestly, the truth was simpler. He chose. He chose to hurt instead of heal. He chose control instead of connection. He chose power instead of mercy. And, no childhood, no lie, no heartbreak can turn those choices into innocence. When the switch was pulled, there was no scream, no fight, just silence. But that silence did not mean the story ended, because the real ending was not his death. It was the lesson he left behind, a lesson written in empty bedrooms, in unfinished lives, in families that never healed. That evil does not always look evil. Sometimes it looks polite, sometimes it looks weak, sometimes it asks for help, sometimes it studies law, sometimes it works in politics, sometimes it smiles and says, "Trust me." And that is why this story matters, not to glorify him, not to remember his name, but to remember the truth. The most dangerous monsters do not hide in the dark. They walk in the light. They learn our kindness. They use our empathy. They wait for our trust. And when we understand this, we become stronger. We listen to fear instead of ignoring it. We notice signs instead of explaining them away. We protect each other instead of assuming safety. This story is not about one man. It is about how lies grow, how silence feeds them, and how pain can turn into cruelty when it is never faced. And it is also about responsibility, because knowing this story means we can stop another one from being written. And somewhere, in some small town, another child is being born, and his future is not written yet. Whether he becomes a man or a monster depends on truth, on care, on choice. And that is why this story truly ends. Thank you from my heart to every single person who stayed with me until the end of this video. Your time means more than you know. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if you want to support me and help me keep creating stronger and better stories, you can support me on Ko-fi. Your support makes a real difference and allows me to continue this journey with you. Write in the comments, what story do you want next? True crime, serial killers, or mysterious cases? See you in the next story.